takes time. So whatever skills are required can be acquired slowly. So basic skills you can start acquiring, and then of course they are very important. Those skills are very important, but they are not required initially. That was the biggest realization I had, and thankfully that I had that realization, and that is why I could start.
Hey guys, namaste and welcome to Be Your Unapologetic Self podcast. I am your host Sharayu, a marketer and creator by profession, having a passion for personal self-development, spirituality and everything that enables us to live life of authenticity by being our unapologetic self. Join me here as I share inspiring stories, learnings, conversation to start living our life as our unapologetic self. This is the first guest episode of Be Your Unapologetic Self podcast. Today we have our guest Nachiket Kshire, host of Inspiration Katta, a Marathi podcast show where he interviews various inspiring personalities. His second show, Inspiration Chaupal, is a Hindi podcast version. He also hosts a third show called Cementing Wedding with Marriage, which is again a Marathi podcast all about relationship. His mission is to take self-help Gyan to audiences in Marathi and Hindi. In this episode, we discuss how Nachiket began his podcasting journey as an amateur, how he scaled it, and how now successfully he is hosting 3 podcast shows. He shares importance of getting started and consistently pursuing one's passion. He also shares some interesting and key learnings from interviewing various eminent guests on his show. So let's begin with today's episode. Hello Nachiket.
Hello Sharayu.
Welcome to Be Your Unapologetic Self podcast. Let me tell you all, Nachiket is my first guest and I'm so excited and grateful to have him on as my guest today. To be very honest, a little bit nervous also since it is my first guest interviewer and it is you who I have been looking up to since last almost a year, how you have went about launching your own podcast show. Not one, but over a period of time now you have come up with almost 3 podcast shows, doing it in such a beautiful manner, getting so many eminent guest speakers, and truly you are following the mission of what your podcast says, which is Inspiration Katta, which is a Marathi podcast meant to inspire people, especially Marathi audience. But I really appreciated your thought of coming up with this kind of a topic to really inspire people. That too in the last year, which was 2020, one of the most dramatic year for all of us. So you came up with that initiative, you started doing it, and slowly and gradually you have now moved on to Hindi podcast, Inspiration Chaupal, and then yet another third podcast, which I want that we will discuss later as we go on.
Yeah.
But I'll stop talking now and I'll just want you to start giving us little bit about your background, how you went about all of this.
Sure. First of all, Sharayu, all the best for your venture. You are starting up with this new podcast, and all the best. And we are sure that you will do it consistently, and you will reach. You will do a lot of episodes of this podcast. So all the best for that. And it's completely my pleasure to be here, to be invited on your show as a first guest. It's my pleasure. Thanks for the introduction that you gave. You really made it feel like I'm a someone who has done something special, but it is not like that. I'm just one of you, and just the thing is, I started a year before you, so that is the only thing which is different here.
So that is what I want to come upon first and
Yeah.
foremost, since we get into the discussion. The podcast is all about being unapologetic self, which means
Yeah.
doing something which you are really passionate about, taking that first step, and nothing
Yes.
you can accomplish in life before taking that first step.
Yeah.
Can you share with all of us, how did you start?
Yeah, surely. So all started in somewhere in 2018 end and 2019 beginning. I was going through a really tough phase of my life. A lot of negative things were, a lot of negative emotions were going on. So I wanted something to happen in my life, and at that time, earlier I used to read, but very, not very often. I mean, one couple of books a year or like that, not much. That phase I wanted to uplift my life and uplift my emotions. I started watching the YouTube videos. Those motivational videos are there, a lot of motivational videos are there. It gave motivation for few, sometimes for few hours, sometimes for few days, and after that, limited phase, the motivation used to go away. That was not working, so I thought probably I should change to something else. And my job makes me travel a lot, at least 2 to 3 hours a day in my car. I used to do it pre-COVID. That was kind of a traveling I used to do. Even though switching from one video to another on YouTube was a difficult thing. So at that time, I heard about podcast. I started listening to podcasts. Also at that time, Audible and Storytel was also starting up, and they also had come up in a big way at that time. So I subscribed to Storytel, start listening to the audiobooks, start listening to the podcast on different podcasting apps. And then I realized that this is something different. This is not motivational. This is not, it is not giving you a temporary motivation which will, last only for few hours. Many of the podcasts were taking the subject deep. They were like 1 hour, 1.5 hour long podcast where the subject was discussed in a very focused and a very detailed manner. And slowly I realized that this is something which is working, helping me change my mindset. So I started listening to it more and more. In the audiobooks also I started listening to more and more. But somehow I felt that all of this self-help gyan, as you say, is available mostly in English. And somebody like me who comes from a typical Maharashtrian family where the culture is quite essentially Marathi. I mean, we watch more Marathi movies than the Hindi or English movies. We watch Marathi television news than the English or Hindi news. So this is a culture in my house, and I come from a background where I studied in a Marathi medium school. So I always felt that although I understand, or most of us understand English, but I somehow felt that if knowledge was in Marathi, it would have helped me even more. I would have really connected to it. So I somehow felt that it should come in Marathi. It is always said that you feel that somebody else should start it. But at some point in time, I realized that, why shouldn't I not do it? And that was the beginning of 2020. I was thinking about it, and then fortunately the lockdown came and I got the opportunity, I got the time, and then I use that time and opportunity to start the podcast.
I love that because I can so very resonate with this. So I could very much relate to the fact where you said that you
Yeah.
traveled in your job for 2 to 3 hours. So same was for me, like how I came to
Yeah.
know about it. Something like this exists,
Right.
podcast or Audible or Storytel. But I came across this podcast thing, and as rightly you said, topics
Hmm.
were so deep in discussion, and the conversation which happened, like I felt that was
Yes.
the best use of my time. But I absolutely love the idea of you coming up and doing something which nobody was doing, and you found that okay, there was a lot of content out there, but you felt that you should do
Yes.
something in Marathi, and you started. I want to know here is that
Yeah.
since this is completely new thing for you, your
Yes.
past job was into something else, and I'm sure and I believe you have
Yeah.
been doing that for quite a long time. So starting something new, it always
Right.
is it's not that
Yes.
easy for most of us. And you rightly said there was a lockdown. No doubt that it
Yes.
was very, very scary. But simultaneously, it also gave us some time to think through.
Yeah.
So, how did you actually go about utilizing that time and, really taking that action
Yeah.
first step?
Yeah, surely. So, Sharayu, when people take that first step, we take that first step only when we are sure of something. We have that conviction that this will work. No, that conviction comes when we think over it, when we, have a vision, when we visualize it, when we have a self talk about it, when we conceptualize it in a right way. That time we can take that first step. So that was happening in my mind past 6 7 months. Like other things, I had many self doubts, I had self limiting things in my mind, but somehow I could overcome those self limiting beliefs and took that first step.
I'm so glad that happened. And I mean, that comes to a very important discussion here because that
Yeah.
becomes a very important point. Because, as you rightly said, first and foremost, you need that slight
Yeah.
amount of self belief and conviction. It is not like
Hmm.
someone would be very much
Yeah.
confident, let me start do something. Since you said you were listening to this from 2018, and after over and over listening, somewhere you got that confidence, you
Right.
thought that, okay, maybe I can do that. and then you overcame some self-limiting beliefs, because those are
Right.
always there some or the other. So definitely my next question would be here, that how did you overcome those self-limiting beliefs, and if you're okay to let us know what were those.
Surely, with your permission, I'll take some time to explain this. For any venture to reach a scale or to reach a level, it has to go through three major stages. Stage one is where you conceptualize the concept, where you dream about it, when you think about it. That is the first stage. For this, you do not have any prerequisites. Anybody can dream of anything. Anybody can think about anything. Anybody can have a vision of anything. Even my 5-year-old kid dreams of many things. So for dreaming or for to have a vision, there are no prerequisites. Anybody can do it. Step two is taking that first step. For that, you need a basic domain knowledge. Whatever you are doing, you have to learn few things. You need a basic domain knowledge. And step three is where you scale up, where you excel in that field, where you monetize that field. Now for this stage three, you need certain skills. You need skills like you need to have a great communication skill. You need to have human resources management skills. You need to have financial management skills. Be a good leader, great leader. Unless and until you have all these skills, you cannot scale up or you cannot monetize your passion field. But what happens is, when you are small, when you are ignorant, you don't think about step 3 or stage 3. You only think about stage 1 or step 1, that is dreaming. But slowly when you grow up, while dreaming only, you start thinking about stage 3. So that is the biggest hurdle in doing anything. I mean, I used to dream about many things, but while dreaming, I used to think about, "Arey, mere paas to I don't have the financial management skills. So how can I scale up this? How can I do this business? How can I, be a leader? How can I have a vision?" I used to think that because I don't have all these skills, to have a vision is not my job. It is not my cup of tea. No, vision is for the visionaries to have. Ratan Tata can have a vision. I am an ordinary person. As I said, I was reading or I was listening to all these ebook, audiobooks, to all these podcasts. They helped me a lot in realizing the fact that all these steps are individually different. You need not think about stage 3 when you are at stage 1. So this happened with me in my podcasting journey as well. I mean, when I was thinking about it, so my vision was take this knowledge which is abundantly and freely available in the market to the Marathi audiences. So that was the vision. The podcast was a medium which that idea came a little later, but the vision was to take the knowledge to the people. Earlier, maybe if I had this vision, I would have forget about it, because that self doubt again would have come in my mind. Ki, "Arey, I can't do this. I'm an ordinary person. How will I do this? How can I have a vision?" But because now I had realized the fact that there are different stages, and you need not worry about stage 3 while visualizing. I could visualize it. I could think about it. Start sleeping over the idea. Then suddenly one day, what happened was I saw an ad from Vijay Gautam that he's starting this online course for the podcasting, and this you can learn and launch your own podcast for this sum. And of course, the lockdown had already started. It was around 24th of March to 2020, and I realized, no, at least for next 1 month I am at home, so let's try this. And this aligns with my vision of taking the knowledge to the people. So that is why I took that step, joined that course, learned. So for, as I said, for stage 2, you need a domain knowledge. You need how to do it. I learned that. After learning that, I launched the podcast. That step was also taken care of. Slowly, steadily, I also realized that stage 3 or step 3 is not to be done at one go. I mean, you cannot scale. I mean, if you have a company with a one employee, you cannot scale it to 100 or 1,000 employee company in 1 month or 1 year. So it takes time. So whatever skills are required can be acquired slowly, slowly. So basic skills you can start acquiring, and then of course they are very important. Those skills are very important, but they are not required initially. That was the biggest realization I had, and thankfully that I had that realization, and that is why I could start.
Very valid point you made, because I think one of the aspect which happened with me also, and what you are telling here, is that when we start thinking about the very very future steps, like maybe step third, or like you very nicely again told us that it is first step 1, which is about dreaming and visualizing, because that is very important to have some kind of a vision, and that is how you will get started. You know the reason why you're getting started. Second thing thing is skills, and skills today I believe that in market there are so many things out there that you can learn. So help is always available in that way. So it is all about taking that one first step. Like you went step by step. So I think overthinking, if I can reframe it, you did not get into that overthinking trap.
And other thing also which I realized, and which was a self limiting belief that I had, or probably most of us have, is we combine all the aspects of our life. And it happens many times that you are a failure in one or two aspects, and then you start judging yourself that, oh no, I can't do this. I mean, I'm a failure in this part, this aspect of my life, so how can I do this? So that also I realized that to separate all the aspects of the life. Well, probably I am not good at finances. I may not be good at relationships, but I may be good at this. So that also I realized, and that also helped me a lot.
Very properly you said. A lot of the time we associate failures into something else and we combine them, or we associate it,
Yeah,
especially when you're starting something new. So that
right.
is again a kind of a mental
Yeah,
mind.
it is all about mindset. It is all about mindset.
So I also remember like when I approached you, like all the questions which I was seeing you putting out these episodes and interviewing people, doing it consistently. Now all
I've released 34, and already 4 are on its way. Tomorrow one is coming, and then yeah.
amazing. And the way you are growing, I'm sure we will reach the milestone very soon, 50, 100, and that is going to happen. But I have this question, like as you rightly said, you did overcome those limiting belief, thinking that, okay,
Yeah,
who am I? Like I'm just an ordinary person to do. So when you started approaching this
yeah.
guest who were some figures in their field, or they had achieved, like doing something which
Hmm.
they liked, or they have established that name. So what was your approach, thought process, and the mindset, and then you started approaching them?
Again, I'll say that if you have conviction in your thought process, if you have conviction in what you are doing, that fear goes away. I mean, I approached few people who were like celebrities. Second episode is with Mahek Mirbza Prabhu. My fifth episode is with Amrut Deshmukh. So they were already celebrities, but I could approach them. Because I had that conviction that I can take their knowledge to the people, or at least I can learn something from them. So I had no doubt in my mind when I was approaching them that I had nothing to lose. So even if they had said no to me, it would have made much of a difference. But with that conviction, I approached them. So you have that conviction in. So that is very important. Have that conviction, whatever you are doing. I mean, it may be right or wrong. I don't know, but have that conviction. So
I agree. I absolutely agree here. And again, a very nice point that you said that you had that conviction, and I feel that somewhere you had a very good intention after all. So that you wanted to take their knowledge and put it across to a community.
these people, they who have achieved something in their life, they are willing to help you. They are absolutely willing to help you. Only thing is, right people should approach them in a right way. You have to approach them in a certain formal way. They are surely going to help you out.
Agreed, agreed. Again, this is a very good encouragement for anyone of us who wants to start something new or do something new. But what I liked when you also told me, like how you went about your
Hmm.
journey, like when we were speaking back
Yeah.
end, that you took one step at a time.
Yes, yes, yes. Because what happens is, you are not sure whether this is really your passion or not. When you are liking it, you feel that this is the thing that you want to do it, but you are not sure whether this is your passion or not. Baby steps, take steps slowly and steadily, and then you will realize whether this is actually your passion or not. I mean, if you are enjoying that journey, then only you can accelerate further. Till that time, take slow steps only. That is what I did. I mean, not necessarily everybody should do that, but
If you can also tell us, like when did you started getting that accelerated momentum, because initially it does happen that we are not getting that kind
yeah.
of a desired result which we want. Was it slow, gradual, or was it like it when the day came that okay, you saw that there was suddenly so many subscribers? There was a point I where you have mentioned, and it was absolutely, I'm sure, a milestone where you were Inspiration Katta became the number one show. It's a self-help podcast group, which definitely is a very huge feat to achieve. So how was that going from where somewhere where probably, they were not getting the desired
Yeah,
kind of result, but something kept you going and then achieving that milestone. So
felt it in my first episode itself, because I enjoyed that journey. I mean, I enjoyed it thoroughly. If I go back to and listen to that episode, it was like, I mean, my sound and everything was pathetic, but then whatever things I could learn from that was was absolutely great. I mean, I could have never learned all those things if, I could have that chance of speaking to those people was great thing in my life as well. I spoke to Suhas Bahulkar. He is a celebrated painter whose, pictures adorn the walls of Parliament House and the President's palace and all. The advice that he gave me was like, in Marathi, he said की काम करताना अडचणी येणारच. If you are working, you surely hurdles will be there. You have to cross those hurdles and get the work done. So that is the first lesson that I learned. And Mehak Mirza Prabhu, who was my second guest, she told me that she said that I have told myself that she will not love herself any less even if she fails.
Wow.
So that was a really that changed my mindset a lot from within. So these kind of little things that I could learn from these people were the motivation or were the inspiration for me. So even if there were no people or no listeners in the beginning, that didn't affect my efforts in doing the show consistently.
Right. And then when was that point when the show reached that milestone? Like it became the number one
Yes.
show in India in the self-help group category.
Started in May 2020. On 4th of or 5th of November 2020, it became number one show in self-help category in all languages in India.
Wow. So what was the feeling, and was there something that you were aiming for or you thought in the beginning?
No, of course, this I never thought this will happen. The feeling was great, of course. But then for after that, for some time, I had a little insecurity. I mean, I always felt, there was a performance pressure on me after that. So I felt, ki, Arey, no, now I'm number one. I mean, I should maintain that spot now. But then that remained for only few days. I then realized that, oh, this is just temporary. I mean, ranking is not what I am looking for. I'm not working. I'm not doing this for the ranking. So even if the ranking goes down in some days, that it won't affect my enthusiasm or my effort. But for a few days, that performance pressure was there.
You definitely managed it very nicely, and I'm sure it also gave you that encouragement and motivation to keep going ahead. And you set that
Yes.
example for a
Yes.
lot of other new beginners in the
Yes.
field, where that it is possible to consistently, and as you rightly said, you have to love the process. Like it takes work, it would be challenges, so consistently keep doing the thing is something which is definitely very, very appreciable. So what were the highlights, if I have to ask you, in the, because you have already been into 1 year in this
Mhm.
new venture of yours, and any key takeaway learnings that you shared after interviewing these many guests on the personal front or on the professional front, or in whatever way that has affected your life?
Few examples I'll give. I mean, yeah. So like Mahek Mirza Prabhu, she gave that was a second episode, and that just imagine if you're getting to learn this in your second episode. She told me that perfection is a future journey. Consistency is the present. You have to be consistent. The perfection will always have a different definition. It is always dynamic. It is always subjective. The definition will change as you go further into your journey. So the progress further, the definition will change. But consistency is the key. So keep putting the content consistently, whatever level you are at. I mean, you are at maybe a beginner stage, put that content out regularly. You will learn something new, put that level content out consistently. So don't run behind perfection. Consistency, yeah. And this fact advice I've got from almost all the content creators that I have interviewed so far. And recently I have interviewed many of them. The last episode was with Mrs. Madhura Bachal, who is Madhura's recipe. She has around 5 million followers on YouTube. She also told the same thing, that consistency is the key. She had to upload 100 episodes before she could even start the monetization process. Yeah, the other learning that got from most of the guests is to work in the passion field. To find your passion. Everybody said, passion, you cannot just go and search your passion. This is impossible. There are tools, maybe you can write down things and then see what are the major things you have written, and you may get some idea, but that is not how you can find your passion unless and until you start working on something. You will not realize whether this is actually your passion or not. A key takeaway.
Absolutely. What very much like until unless you do, you will
Yes.
not know whether you love doing it or you want to
Yes,
continue
yes.
doing that.
And again, another thing is passion. Finding passion is not enough. You have to work hard, you have to have dedication, you have to learn new things consistently. So there are a lot of things which needs to be done after finding the passion as well.
Absolutely. Again, I mean, I really appreciate the Nachike because a lot of time we hear in this, self development world, like everywhere around. It is all about finding your passion, go
One,
behind
yes,
your
yes.
passion. But that is just step one. That is the first step, and thereafter the journey begins. There would be so many things, challenges which would come up, and it is a journey in itself. Very nice learning which you have shared. So thank you so much. And one thing which comes to my mind is that with respect to consistency, we cannot keep consistent. Most of the time, we do know what is our passion. Like somebody, and I'm sure in this lockdown period, a lot of people have kind
Correct.
of started doing a lot of different things, understood their passion. So, is there any habit or any system or any routine which
Yeah.
you follow or which you can suggest to
First
be
is you
consistent?
cannot be consistent if you are doing something which you are not liking or which is not your passion. So that is the basic thing. You need to work in your passion area. That is the first and foremost thing. If you are working in your passion field, consistency in hard work, consistency in dedication, consistency in work will automatically come. You don't have to work differently towards that. But if you are yet to find your passion and you are doing something which needs to be done on a consistent basis, what you have to do is you have to find the need, or why you are doing it. I mean, what purpose it is solving. There are two things. I mean, you may start something which has a demand in the market, you may start something which is needed in the market, but there's no demand for it. So if you start something which has a demand, if there is supply and demand, you will stop doing it once the demand fades. But if you are doing something which is needed but demand is not yet created, you will work passionately, or you will work on it, create the demand, because you are convinced that you know that the need is there in the market. Yeah, so you need to find a purpose why you are doing it. If you find your why, then it will be very easy to be consistent.
It is all
Yeah,
individual conviction and the purpose which we had, because everybody of us,
right.
even I believe that we have our own message to share and we all do it in our own way.
And even if one additional person is going to be benefited with whatever we are doing, we must do it, because there are thousands, as you said, there are a lot of podcasts already available, but probably that person who actually needs it may not be listening to it. And
Correct.
just because he or she is your friend, he may listen to your podcast, and that may help. And of course, personally, that you learn, that is priceless. I mean, you cannot learn it from any other source. So that is the added benefit.
Now, since already one, the Inspiration Katta, your Marathi podcast show, is already doing so well now. So, what made you launch the other
Yeah,
two
so
channels?
Inspiration Katta had started in May 2020. I mean, we have a community of podcasters wherein a lot of non-Marathi podcasters are there. They used to always keep telling me, Nachiket, we want to listen to your podcast, but we can't because it's in Marathi. We don't understand Marathi. Please start in Hindi or English. Initially, I did not take it seriously, but then slowly, when Inspiration Katta started doing well, or I started getting good guests, even I got used to editing and all the post production work, and time required for putting out one episode out reduced to a certain extent. Then I could concentrate on the other podcast as well. So I started Hindi podcast, which happened in a way that I was looking for a guest. I mean, her name is Sonia Conjetti. If you have heard about it, she has started a Facebook group called Pune Ladies. So which is really popular in amongst the ladies in Pune, and many cities now have copied the same format. So it's a wonderful group, and I wanted to interview her, and I had approached her, but she said that she could speak Marathi, born and brought up in Pune, but she said that her Marathi is not that good. I mean, she can't speak it publicly. Then she said, "Ki, why don't you do it in Hindi?" Same time, I was also thinking of launching a Hindi podcast. So Inspiration Katta, when I started, I was consistent from day one. Inspiration Chaupal, I mean, I had what you say, that lalach in my mind that Hindi will have a bigger reach. That was also one of the reasons that I started Hindi podcast. And because I had that greed in my mind, I could not be consistent in Hindi initially. So I launched that first episode, and then for next 2 months I did not do anything. Now again I yes, now I come on track because now I've changed the motive behind the podcast. Again, now I've the Hindi motive behind the Hindi podcast again is same as the Marathi, that to take the knowledge to the people. That has become the motive. So that has helped me to again be consistent in the field.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, it is
Yes.
again a very practical thing which can happen with anyone. Like you start and you think this would is going to be a very big thing. And very rightly you said it is so normal. Like you did something which was different in Hindi, thinking that it definitely
Yeah.
does a bigger reach. But it's again you stopped somewhere due to whatever reason. But the important thing is you
Yes.
got
Yes.
back on track and that the purpose behind that is what helped you to
Yeah.
get behind that. The third one also now is already you have
Yeah, it is
started.
really interesting, and it is so. It the third podcast is called "Cementing Wedding with Marriage." So I am doing this in collaboration with Leena Paranjpe, who is millennial marriage coach. She had approached
Right.
me somewhere in December 2020. She said that can we do something in collaboration? So I then we spoke about it, and then I realized the fact that this particular topic is very very important. I also had some issues in my personal life, so I said, let's do it, and we started it in February 2020. This is again a Marathi podcast for a particular niche, because Inspiration Katta anybody can listen, but Cementing Wedding with Marriage is only not only, but it is for the people, the millennials who want to get married, or for their parents. It has a limited listener base, so it is not for open for all, but still it was in Marathi. Yes, it is important. Yeah, and we launched it in February 2020. We were very very surprised the way it got the response. It was featured in new and noteworthy section of Apple Podcasts within few weeks of it being launched, and we got thousands of listeners in the first month itself, and it is doing great. I mean, it is doing wonderfully well. People are just loving the topics. Got many messages from the listeners, personal messages on our Instagram page, WhatsApp, that this is really great. The topic is really important. It helped us a lot. I mean, that was wonderful. I mean, I did not
Wow.
get so many messages for even Inspiration Katta, but for this topic I got many personal messages from many listeners, so that made us look forward.
So, I mean, very interesting. And what you shared, there was a very good engagement which is happening with this third podcast, cementing the wedding. So, and it is interesting topic. It is very much
Yes.
niche, as you rightly said. So, what do you think is a success factor behind that? That there is a good engagement, is a selection of a good topic, and I'm sure that is a very
Yeah.
important fact that the content which you're giving out is very much relevant.
We did not think about it prior to starting this, but then we realized it afterwards that the need of that subject was there, availability was not there. I mean, probably English podcasts may be there. What happens is when you speak in that local language, that connection, you get connected. So that need was always there, and so I keep telling my fellow podcasters that there's a need for every topic in Marathi podcasting. You start any subject, you start podcasting any subject, and it will work.
It will work. So regional language is the need of the hour. That is what definitely the message you're giving us, right? One more thing which I really appreciate about Nachiket in person is that he's very helpful, very much into helping other podcasters. Like you're very active and building a community in itself. So I just like wanted to ask you, how do you think that community, having a community, how does that help, and how is it like? What is the importance of having a community?
The main purpose behind the community building is the aim that I have, that to take the knowledge which is available in English or other languages to the audiences in Marathi and Hindi as well. So that is the main purpose. Now, to achieve this, we will require lot of new podcasters. I cannot reach many people. I mean, I can have a limited reach, but if we have a community wherein if we can develop a ecosystem, we can create an ecosystem wherein many podcasters can come, learn, start their own podcast in different topics, in different niche, so that people will be able to can listen to different topics. Now, just imagine this thing, that if I am sharing my podcast with my listeners, they are only listening Inspiration Katta, they are spending a limited time on podcasting app or listening to podcast. The other times they are watching either YouTube or doing something else. If they get lot of other Marathi podcasts as well, they will start spending more time on podcasting apps or listening to podcasts, and lesser time on other
Right.
media sources. So that in itself will help all the podcasters in the community. So ecosystem needs to be created, which currently was is missing. And as you said, that My podcast reached number one in self-help group in India in all languages. Many such topics, many such podcasts are required. We can reach to more and more
Agreed.
people.
I absolutely love that response of yours that community wise it is required and what you feel that contribution is required from every one of us because every one of us has a different perspective which needs to
Yes,
be
yes.
put out there. And we should not think that, okay, already so many people are doing, so it is not required. It is all about developing
Yes.
an ecosystem. And I really appreciate your vision where you are thinking in the long term aspect of getting the audience into the ecosystem of podcast and listening to different topics rather than on other platform which are also good. Entertainment is good, but podcast has its own version of entertainment.
As we spoke in the beginning, that I never have thought of having any vision. Maybe a couple of years back, I always felt that to have a vision is a job of a visionary leader, like leader, CEO of a company, or by Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs. But then nobody interviewed Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos or Vijay Shekhar Sharma or Videsh Agarwal when the concept of their ideas. I mean, when Paytm was just a concept in Shekhar Sharma's head, nobody interviewed him. So anybody can have a vision, even an ordinary person like me.
Absolutely. I appreciate that fact that even ordinary people can have a vision and you
Yes.
can take it to life. And my purpose again to like interview somebody like you is to, it becomes so much relatable to all of us that, if I can see that, okay, Nachiket is doing that, I can do that. Like, it is possible. Just having that sense of thought to your vision itself gives you that courage and motivation to begin something. Nachiket, thanks a lot. Like, so much of interesting points you have said now. I mean, thank you so much for sharing all of those. I just wanted to ask you, like, today you are doing something which you love from your heart. So what advice would you give to your younger self?
Learnings of life that came with the journey has helped me to do this today. So only thing is, I just feel that the realization which I got in 2020, if it had come in a little earlier, it would have been great. Many times what happens is the incidences or the things that which happened in our lives, sometimes we may not feel that they were bad. It is only the other people who tells you that this bad has happened in your life.
Everybody has their own perspective, but I think this is a very good perspective to have, that whatever good bad happened for good. It was a learning. But then what even I have realized is that it doesn't matter at whatever stage
Yeah.
of your life you start, you have to take that step.
Surely. I mean, we have that Abraham Lincoln ka story is always told, na? When he was a failure all his life, and then he went on to become a great leader. Unfortunately, with our society, we have two extremes. At one end, people tell you sarcastically, "Acha, tu Abraham Lincoln banega." You have that motivational videos wherein they to tell you, no, तुमको Abraham Lincoln बनना ही है. So there is no middle way wherein somebody will tell you in a subtle way that this can also happen. So
Anything, any movie or books or that has inspired you a lot? Any podcast show which has inspired you, if you can tell?
so many of them, the book, if you say, of course, The Alchemist has changed my perspective. If you say movie, if you've seen that movie Ratatouille, that has changed my perspective. I mean, as I said, that anybody can have a vision. In that film they said that anybody can cook. We can say that anybody can have a vision. Everybody can have a dream. To fulfill them, you need certain skill sets, which of course you can learn. Those skill sets are not required to dream.
That is such a valid point. Like, you don't need skill set and you don't need all the expertise in the world to dream. You can start with dreaming, having a vision, visualizing, and slowly, gradually, you will get there. Since we're talking about podcasts, which are the podcast show which has inspired you and which one you can recommend our listeners?
So Vijay Gautam's podcast was the one which I used to listen to regularly, which helped me a lot. Vijay Gautam's podcast helped me in two ways. One is the knowledge or the insight shared by the guest. That was one thing. The other thing which helped me a lot was Vijay Gautam himself, because he started with, in spite of all the limitations that he had,
Exactly.
and in spite of that, he could achieve so much in his life. That made me realize that we are too judgmental in our lives. So Vijay is my mentor in more than one sense. Looking at his podcast, his way of doing it, I realized the fact that what is important is the content.
The big vision matters, your intentions matter, and your message matters. Again, thanks a lot for sharing that. So for everyone of you, you can surely check out both all the three podcasts, Vijay Speaks and Inspiration Katta. He's come on Inspiration Chaupal, where you had interviewed him. So again, a very interesting episode. I enjoyed it a lot. Nachiket, almost coming to the end of the interview now. So since my show is all about being your highest or unapologetic self, whatever you have shared, it's all about starting and going out there and not, really thinking about the perfectionism or what people will think, or you need not be somebody when you start. It's okay to start as an amateur, but just have that conviction in yourself. So being unapologetic about yourself, about your message,
Yeah.
and then going out there and definitely doing the work, which will help other people also in a way. We wish you all the best and thank you so much for coming on my show and sharing such a beautiful nuggets of wisdom and literally all the learnings. I'm sure a lot of us can take away definitely a lot of things from this talk and discussion of starting something new and pursuing it, scaling it to the height, and definitely then the result thereafter, whatever we are going to get. I enjoyed it a lot. It was my first interview.
It was a very nice experience. It was a really pleasure for me to come on your show. I will definitely would like to share with the audience or the listeners that even 1 year can be a game changer for you. I mean, in 1 year, the mind's entire mindset can change. And again, I will also tell you the fact that the mindset may not change in all the aspects of your life. It may change in a particular aspect, and slowly, it will change the mindset in other aspects of your life as well. So for example, as a person, I am very, very less judgmental now. I don't judge people or myself as well. So that is one change I can see in myself. There might be other changes which may not be visible as yet.
And Nachiket, honestly, just having this interaction with you has given me a lot of inspiration. Thanks a lot again, Nachiket, and for coming here and sharing your journey with us, sharing your learning with us. It was a great time, and I hope you too had a great time. So, where can our listeners find you?
So they can listen to all the podcasts on any leading podcasting app like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, anywhere. They can just search Inspiration Katta or Inspiration Chaupal for Hindi podcast, and Cementing Wedding with Marriage is the third podcast that is available. And they can also visit my website, which is www.mipodcaster.com.
Great. So I'll link all of them in my description box. So please, everybody, go and check the description links, and you can find Nachiket on all the three platforms. And I'm sure you will enjoy all of his podcast episodes and the great content which he is consistently putting out there and creating a difference. And again, I thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Sharayu. The pleasure is mine, definitely mine. And all the best to you for your podcast. I'm sure you'll do great. This will help many, many people in more than one ways. Keep doing it, keep doing it.
Thank you so much for saying that, and it means a lot for. Thank you so much again. See you all again then for the yet another unapologetic episode later on. And here is where we sign off for today's interview with Nachiket Kshire. Thank you so much, guys. I'm so grateful that you have taken time out to listen to the podcast episode. Please do share your reviews and feedback, which will allow me to create in better ways. Please like, share, and subscribe to my podcast show, Be Your Unapologetic Self. So, see you again with yet another unapologetic episode. Bye.